Annapolis wraps up another legislative session, but did it actually solve anything? We saw an energy bill hit with relief, immigration bills passed at the last minute, and ongoing concerns about spending oversight and transparency. There's a lot to cover today. Cary, Democrats would argue this session tackled real issues: energy costs, immigration policy, housing. What was really accomplished?
Not that much. Like I was saying, like you and I have talked, we created this illusion that we're trying to do something. Like for example, in the energy bill, they're trying to create another industry of your internet services. You get to pick and choose which one serves you, or your cell service. Now it's electric, and trying to lock in future costs, but they're not dealing with the root of the problem, and that's demand, electric demand. We're the hub of the international data centers, here in Loudoun County in Virginia. We're paying the price because the amount of electricity and water that they're using is creating a burden on our ratepayers here in Maryland. How do we deal with that? You got to get to the root cause. There has to be a summit between Maryland and Virginia on the Potomac River, and they don't want to deal with that, especially in an election year.
Well, that's always the problem, is getting something done during an election year. But Jackie, Maryland passed the Community Trust Act, which limits cooperation with ICE. No detainers, no transfers, no notification without a judicial warrant. Supporters say it builds trust in immigrant communities. Critics say it creates legal risks. Where do you come down?
Yeah, I mean, I think the
Really
perfect
accomplished here.
I think what you really need to look at is what happened in Minneapolis. What happens when local police are not allowed to cooperate with ICE is that they end up having to go and find the the people who have arrest warrants themselves. And when they're going after the worst of the worst, which again is what the Trump admin had promised to do, they're also inevitably in these neighborhoods going to come across not the worst of the worst, but people who are still in this country illegally, which again is a crime. And they are supposed to do their job, which is to get them out of here. Now, if the worst of the worst, let's say somebody who murdered somebody was in this country illegally, was arrested, and they were allowed to contact ICE and say, hey, we picked up this guy, he murdered somebody, and he is an illegal immigrant, we could get him out of here. We could go right to the jails and get him out of here, which is, I would say, way more. I can't think of anybody on the other side who would say, let's keep the illegal immigrant murderers in the country. But we've seen now time and again in blue states or blue areas where they're being told you can't work with ICE, that they're also soft on crime. We're seeing illegal immigrant criminals being let back on the street only to go and commit a worse crime,
Well,
and it's too late. Lives are lost.
I want to go to Cary on this. Cary, was this just a visceral reaction to the Trump administration? I mean, there was a whole expansion of immigration protections, some of which may or may not be legally constitutional. I mean, they banned the 287G program. They banned all they don't want ICE agents to have masks on. I mean, this just seems that there's a visceral reaction and not a actual policy that's being implemented.
I would agree that Trump is the catalyst. The Trump policies is the catalyst for the reaction that's occurring. But having said that, I don't disagree with requiring, law enforcement to have judicial warrants instead of administrative warrants. I mean, the Fourth Amendment protections are guaranteed to everybody in this country. The only problem I have is the way I mean, Jackie, to speak to your terms, if you committed a murder, I don't care if you're an immigrant or whatever, they're going to pick you up and they're going to hand you over to ICE. The problem that I have is where they limit, for example, rapes, if a person served a less than 12-month term in prison for rape, let's say, he gets protected under this new bill. Whereas if he served any more than that, boom, he's going to go, he's going to go to jail, or he's going to be picked up by ICE. And as far as the masks are concerned, come on. I mean,
Well, let's just focus on what's going to
okay,
happen
that's
from
fine.
with
That's fine.
this with as a result of this legislation. And Jackie, with the laws of physics are and the laws of political physics are, every action has a reaction. Is the Trump administration going to cut funding for Maryland as a result of it becoming a sanctuary state,
Oh,
or are we going to see
100%.
an uptick in ICE activity to enforce the law?
I think you're going to see a combination of both. I think in areas like Montgomery County that are blue, they're going to, comply with what the state is doing and say, yeah, like we don't want to touch ICE, we don't want to work with them, which unfortunately I think is going to lead to an uptick in crime in these areas. But when you look at people on the Eastern Shore and out in Western Maryland and the redder parts of the state, their sheriffs already saying, like, looking for ways to continue to cooperate with ICE because they're saying, we're not doing this. This is not what we don't believe that this is the right thing to do. We believe that we should be helping out law enforcement, and this is not going to make our community safer. So I think that unfortunately the whole state is going to bear, the brunt of the repercussions from the Trump administration. I do
All
think that we're going to lose federal funding, but the red counties are still going to try and work with ICE. They're going to find ways around it.
Well, we have to go to our next topic because there's a lot to talk about. And Cary, you talked about it originally, the focus on the energy bill. Let's start with what the General Assembly says this bill will do. Supporters call it the crown jewel of the session, arguing it will provide consumer relief from rising utility costs, stabilize rates, and position Maryland for future energy demand, even if much of that relief may take time to show up in people's bill. So here's the question. Is this legislation real near-term relief for Maryland ratepayers, or a long-term policy solution that doesn't actually address the immediate need of people today?
To me,
Yep, that's you.
I don't see how it can meet the needs of the people today. We just had a winter where our electric bills doubled. Doubled. I mean, that's insanity. Okay, um, they're talking about freezing prices for residents of the county and allowing it to go up just a little bit. Yeah, but if your starting place is double and it can go up a little bit. I mean, you can see where that brings us. The problem again is the consumption of electricity. We have a 40% deficit in the state of Maryland. We are buying 40% of our electricity out of state, which creates higher costs for electricity. The problem we have is that our neighbor, Loudoun County, beat us to the punch, built all these data centers, tapped the Potomac River for water, and today the Potomac River is endangered, okay, for not only low water during drought, but which could harm our water intake for our homes, right? But they're using that water not for people's lives, but for commercial purposes, and they're doing it under a mandate that's 150 years old. The reality is today, our state, Maryland, and Virginia have to get together and update those policies.
Well, we got to give it to Jackie because we are running out of time. I've seen this movie before, Jackie. It was called Empower Maryland, and there are now whistleblowers that say millions have been misspent or over the savings overstated. So is this just another feel good policy that the General Assembly has passed?
Well, there's not too much to feel good about because at the end of the day, it's saving the average ratepayer $12.50, which when your bill is $800+ is not that much of a relief. And, Carrie is completely right. We are importing most of our energy. I personally think that the solution isn't shutting down more of our energy plants, which is what the Moore administration has been doing, but rather keeping Calvert Cliffs open and actually expanding its usage. And if people don't know what Calvert Cliffs is, it's the only nuclear plant we have in this state. We really should be ramping that up. We need to be generating more electricity. We need to not be importing it from other states. And if you go and look by the line by line on your bill, that power fee costs more than the actual electricity yourself that you're paying for. At least on my bill it does. So that
Well,
should be gone.
we're going
And
to
the
talk
more
about the hidden fee.
administration,
We got to talk. We got to keep moving. I'm sorry, Jackie, but you're absolutely right. And it's about hidden fees. And this is one that really Well, it grates my gears. And Cary, you're going to let you talk about this. There is now a paint fee, essentially a surcharge on every gallon of paint sold in the state. And the money goes to a third-party nonprofit program, regardless of how many cans of paint or gallons of paint they recycle. These are the kind of charges that I find just mind blowing. Cary, you got any thoughts on this?
These are punitive taxes. Punitive taxes. It's not just the paint fee. It's, you have the energy tax in our electric bill that was supposed to sunset 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's exponentially going up with the increased electric bills. You got the bag tax. I mean, you've got stormwater tax. It's too much.
Well, I'm sorry we have to cut this off because we do have two other topics for today. It was great. And as Jackie said at the very beginning, we could talk about the General Assembly and what they did for an hour. So maybe we'll have to have a little bit more next time.